Dinner, which had felt almost peaceful, snapped into a courtroom when my daughter shouted across the table, "Mom, you're this family's burden. Get out." Under everyone's stunned silence, I rose, lifted my suitcase, not merely to leave, but to tear open a secret that could destroy us all. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end. And tell me, what city are you watching my story from? I want to know just how far it's traveled." I set my fork down and checked my watch. It was 7:30 p.m. 5 years ago, almost to the minute, I walked into this house with 2 suitcases and the hope of growing old surrounded by people who loved me. Funny how precisely your memory bookmarks the moments that change your life. "Grandma, you're staring at that old clock again," Lowell said. He was 13 then, my grandson, and the only one who ever seemed to notice what I did. "They tell the right time, honey," I answered. Unlike your electronic gizmos, Marianne, my only daughter, rolled her eyes, her usual way of responding to anything I said these days. At 42. She looked just like she did in high school. The same intolerance for other people's opinions, the same smugness, now edged with the kind of wrinkles that come from being annoyed all the time. Harlan, her husband, just kept slicing the roast beef like he didn't hear a thing. Tall, already going gray, and used to being listened to without question. He'd been the top doctor for 16 years. Everyone in town respected him. At home, they feared his silence more than his anger. "Mom, could you not start?" Marianne said, in that tone people use with toddlers or the elderly. "It's been a long day." "I didn't start," I answered softly, putting some salad on my plate. "I was just talking to Lowell." Rosalind, my 16-year-old granddaughter, didn't even look up. Her fingers, black nails and all, slid across the screen under the table like she was born doing it. She was at that age where sitting through a family dinner felt like a punishment, time stolen from friends and group chats. "Rosie," I said, "why don't you put the phone down during dinner?" A sentence I'd said 100 times. For some reason, that night, it was the spark. "Oh my God, Mom," Marianne snapped, dropping her fork. "Can you please stop telling us how to raise our kids? If Rosie wants to be on her phone, that's our decision." I froze. The tension in the room spread like spilled wine. Lowell stared at his plate. Rosie finally looked up, surprised. "I was just suggesting," I tried to say, but Marianne cut me off. "You're always just suggesting. Every dinner. Every time we talk. You can't keep your opinions to yourself. Why can't you just be thankful we let you stay here?" Harlan finally looked up, annoyed but not surprised. He'd been waiting for this, maybe even setting it up. "Marianne," he said in that calm, clinical voice he used to deliver bad news, "I don't think your mother understands the weight she's added to our lives." "Wait," I said, my hands shaking. "I sold my house to be near you. I help with the kids. I cook, I clean, which we end up redoing anyway." Marianne muttered, "You can't even vacuum." Heat rushed to my face. 72 years old, and I was being scolded like a careless maid. "And your stories," she went on, like something had cracked open. "Nobody cares how much bread cost in the 70s, or how you met Dad." "Nobody," the kids asked, I said quietly, glancing at my grandchildren. Lowell gave a small nod, then quickly looked away when he caught his father's eye. "They're just being polite," Harlan said. Unlike their grandmother, who doesn't know when to mind her own business. Something inside me locked up. 5 years of little slights, misread words, and silent rejections suddenly made sense. They didn't want me here. Maybe they never had. "I moved here because you asked me to," I reminded them, keeping my voice steady. "You said the kids needed a grandmother. That was before you turned into a bitter old woman who criticizes everything," Marianne shouted, "before you started snooping around and sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." I froze. So they suspected. They knew I'd seen something. They could feel it. The secret I'd been sitting on for 3 years was suddenly real, like another body in the room. "I'm not spying," I said. My mouth went dry. "I just live here. And that's the whole issue. You live here. You're always here, always watching, judging, meddling. You're a weight on this family. Go away." The silence after her scream was loud enough to feel. Rosalind dropped her phone, and it hit the parquet floor with a sharp clatter. Lowell seemed to stop breathing. Harlan calmly dabbed his mouth with a napkin, like this was some boardroom dinner and not a meltdown in his own house. "Marianne," he said quietly, I don't think this is the best way to handle things. For a second, I thought he might be defending me, but the next thing out of his mouth ended that. Edith deserves a chance to adjust her behavior. We can talk about the house rules. I looked at my daughter, hoping for something in her face, remorse, even hesitation. But Marianne just folded her arms and stared straight at me, eyes burning. No, Harlan, I'm done. Either she goes, or I take the kids and move in with my sister. Your call. I stood up slowly. My legs felt like cotton, but my back stayed straight, a habit I'd kept from decades teaching grade school. You stand up tall, even when you want to collapse. That won't be necessary, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. I'll go, Grandma. No, Lowell shouted, raising his voice for the first time all night. That's not what Mom meant. That's exactly what I meant. Marianne cut in. And don't try to guilt the kids, Mom. That's low, even for you. I looked at them, Lowell, clearly shaken, and Rosalind, not sure what to make of any of it. I'd watched them grow up over the last 5 years, school runs, homework help, scraped knees and heartbreaks. I loved them more than words ever could. I looked around the table. Marianne flushed with fury. Harlan, unreadable. The kids, caught in the middle. What should have been a quiet dinner had turned into my public dismissal. But in that moment, standing there, something inside me went still. I saw everything clearly. No lies, no wishful thinking. I climbed the stairs, knees aching with every step. Maybe it wasn't just the arthritis, it was the weight of what had happened. The choice I'd made. Behind me were my grandchildren's stunned faces, Harlan's cold look, and Marianne's furious glare. My only child, who'd just thrown me out. The little room that had been mine these 5 years looked exactly as it always had. A narrow bed, an old dresser, a desk I'd insisted on bringing with me when I moved in. That desk used to hold stacks of student papers, or letters I wrote to my husband while he was away for work. Now it just held a picture of Lowell and Rosalind, taken 3 Christmases ago, before growing up made smiling feel like a chore. I pulled the same suitcase from under the bed, the one I brought when I first arrived. I remembered Marianne's call after my father passed. She said the kids needed their grandma nearby, said the big house was too empty for me, said Milford had the best schools for them. So I sold the home I'd lived in for 40 years, left friends, left everything familiar, just to be near the last family I had. That first year felt almost perfect. I helped with the kids, made Sunday dinners, told stories about Marianne as a little girl. Harlan was polite enough. The kids, still young and open, loved having me around. We played board games, read at bedtime, worked through homework together, and then things started to shift, slowly, quietly, a comment here, a sigh there, Marianne criticizing how I folded the laundry or cut the vegetables. Harlan barely flinched at first when I brought up the past, just these small, tight grimaces he thought I wouldn't catch. But over time, the disapproval got louder, sharper. My presence in the house started shrinking, not just where I could sit or what I could say, but how I was allowed to feel. I started packing slowly, going through my clothes one by one, picking only what I needed. Then came a soft knock. Lowell stood there, his usual grin gone, worry carved into his face. "Grandma," he said in a hushed voice, like he was scared someone would hear him. "Are you really leaving?" "I am, sweetheart," I said while folding a sweater. "Sometimes grown-ups need some space from each other. But where are you gonna go?" "It's almost 9. I tried to smile without looking forced. "I'll call Dorothea. Remember when we visited her last fall? The big house on Sycamore Lane, that old lady with the cats?" He wrinkled his nose, then caught himself. "You mean the one who gave us raisin cookies?" "That's right," I nodded, pulling down an old photo album. "Dorothea's been my friend forever. We went to college together." He hesitated. "Mom said you could come back if you started." He trailed off, searching for the rest. Respect their boundaries. I kept the sigh inside. Classic Marianne, feeding him lines like he was a messenger with no idea what he was carrying. I walked over and rested my hands on his shoulders. "Some things aren't that simple, honey. Sometimes people split up to find their way back, and sometimes the split is final." I didn't say the rest, that I wasn't coming back. That his mother had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. That his father was tangled in things no 13-year-old should know about. "Will you leave your number?" he asked, and the worry in his voice got me in the gut. "Of course," I said, writing it down. "Call me anytime." Give it to Rosalind. Just then, Marianne appeared in the doorway. Her face was stiff, her eyes red, not from sadness, from fury. I knew the difference. Lowell, she said tightly. Homework, now. But Mom now, she said again, flat and final. He looked at me one last time, eyes full of guilt, and left. Marianne just stared, cold and unblinking. I hope you're not filling his head with stories about what a terrible mother I am. I'd never do that, I said evenly. Unlike you, I don't use children as pawns. Her face twisted. You never understood me, she said through her teeth. Always thought you were better than me. Always looking down. I closed the suitcase and shook my head. No, Marianne. I've always looked at you with love. Sometimes concern, sometimes confusion, but always love. Her voice cracked. If you loved me, you'd respect my choices, my family, my marriage. I looked at her hands, curled tight, knuckles bone white. My little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the park was now throwing her mother out like a stranger. Love doesn't mean closing your eyes, I said quietly. I see what's happening here. I see what you and Harlan are doing. Her eyes widened. Fear flickered there, but she covered it fast. I don't know what you're talking about. If this is about how we're raising our kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I cut in, my voice rising for the first time in years. The fake reports, the side effects you're hiding. You and Harlan risking people's lives for a paycheck and a clean record. Marianne went pale. Her hand went to her throat, the way it always had when she was a little girl and scared. You're imagining things, she said, but it didn't sound like she believed it. You're old. You're confused. Then why are you so eager to get me out? I asked, picking up the suitcase. Why now, right when the trials are wrapping up? She backed up like I'd touched a nerve. Get out, she whispered. Just get out of my house. I walked past her, calm in a way I hadn't felt in months. For 5 years, I lived afraid of losing the last piece of my family. 5 years I stayed silent about what I knew. Now that the decision was out of my hands, I didn't feel grief, just relief. Harlan was waiting for me on the stairs. Tall, lean, pressed shirt, perfect posture, the image of a dependable husband, a respected doctor, someone people trusted. No one would guess this man calmly altered drug trial data, putting dozens, maybe hundreds, of lives at risk. Let me help you with your suitcase, he said, voice polished, hand out. I passed him the bag and made my way downstairs, gripping the railing. My knees protested again, but I kept my body steady. Rosalind stood in the hallway, eyes swollen and red. She'd actually been crying, unlike her mother. Her phone, never far from her, was sitting on the console by the front door, forgotten. Grandma, she whispered, I'm going to miss you. I pulled her close and breathed in the same apple shampoo she'd used since she was a little girl. I will too, sweetheart. But we'll see each other, I promise. Rosalind, Marianne's voice came from upstairs. Go to your room. But Mom, now. Rosalind flinched, gave me one more look, then turned and climbed the stairs. A few seconds later, I heard her door slam. Harlan stepped outside, holding the door. I followed him out to the porch and looked back at the house I'd lived in for 5 years, the pictures on the wall, the fake flowers I'd picked out last spring, the coat hook I always used. All the little signs I'd been there would be gone soon, like I'd never been a part of it. The air was crisp, just cold enough to sting. October in Owasso could be tricky like that, warm during the day, freezing at night. I should have grabbed my coat, but it was still hanging inside, and I wasn't going back in for it. Harlan didn't stop on the porch. He walked straight down to the gate, opened it, and stepped onto the sidewalk. Then, without a word, he dropped my suitcase to the ground. Didn't throw it, but didn't set it down gently either. Just done with it. I called a cab, he said, not even looking at me. It'll be here in 10 minutes. Thank you, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. That's real thoughtful of you. He made a face at the sarcasm, but said nothing. We stood there, just looking at each other. An old woman and a man in his prime, mother-in-law, son-in-law, two people who'd never really understood each other. You know, Harlan, I said, when Marianne brought you home the first time, I thought she'd made a good choice. You had it all, successful, smart, came from a solid family. You seemed steady, dependable. His body stiffened like he was bracing for impact. But over the years, I've learned first impressions don't mean much. Underneath all that polish is a man willing to gamble with people's lives to make money. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but I caught the flicker of fear in his eyes. I'm talking about the ART-43 clinical trials, I said evenly. The reports. You doctored the side effects in 20% of the patients you just decided not to mention. Harlan's face drained of color. In the streetlight, he looked like a wax figure about to melt. That's ridiculous, he said under his breath, glancing at the neighboring houses. You don't have proof, don't I? I raised an eyebrow. What about the original reports I copied 3 years ago? Or that recording of you talking to the rep from the pharmaceutical company, where you spelled it all out? It was a bluff. I didn't have the recording, even if I had heard that conversation, standing just outside the office with the door half open. But he didn't know that his face twisted, fear and fury fighting for space. You've been spying on me, in my own house. I saw it by accident, I said. And then I started paying attention. It's hard not to, when something's clearly off. Harlan stepped closer, fists tight. For a second, I thought he might hit me. But he held back, pulling himself together like it took everything he had. What do you want? He asked through clenched teeth. Money. I let out a sharp laugh. You still don't get it, Harlan. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm a mother worried about her daughter and a grandmother who doesn't want her grandkids, raised in a family built on crime. Then why'd you stay quiet for 3 years? He narrowed his eyes. If you're so righteous, I looked away. It's a question I've asked myself too many times, because I was scared of losing my family. I said honestly, because I thought maybe you'd come to your senses, because I convinced myself the side effects weren't dangerous enough to risk Marianne and the kids. I looked him straight in the eye. But today, you and Marianne made that decision for me. You pushed me out of the family I was terrified of losing, and now I've got nothing left to lose. Harlan, no more secrets, no more silence. Just then, a cab pulled up by the curb. The driver, a young guy with tired eyes, rolled down his window. Mrs. Sanguine, he asked, heading to Holloway Lodge. Yes, I said, eyes still locked on Harlan. That's me. The driver stepped out to grab the suitcase. Harlan didn't move, his face frozen in a mix of shock and fury. You wouldn't dare, he said low. Think of Marianne. Think of the kids. They're all I've ever thought about, I said, opening the car door. I kept quiet for 5 years for their sake. But sometimes silence does more damage than the truth. I got in and shut the door. Through the window, I saw Harlan standing there, fists clenched, tall and tense. Our eyes met for just a second, and I saw something I'd never seen in his face before. Fear. Not for me. Not for the patients his schemes might harm. For himself. The cab pulled away, taking me from the house I'd lived in for 5 years, from the daughter who'd turned her back on me, from the grandchildren I would have done anything for. But I didn't feel like I was being cast out. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. Free from fear. Free from the weight of keeping quiet. Free from betraying what I know is right. The phone buzzed in my purse. Marianne's name on the screen. I didn't pick up. Whatever she had to say, it was too late. I'd already made it clear to Harlan, I wasn't keeping their secrets anymore, and I wasn't going to back down. Holloway Lodge greeted me with soft lighting and quiet lobby music. Most of the guests, business types by the look of things, had already turned in, and only a young front desk clerk with neatly styled hair and a rehearsed smile, which flickered into something more real when he saw a paying customer, was still around. Evening, he said in that polished, friendly way. What can I help you with? I need a room, I told him, handing over my card. Just one night. He checked me in fast. Didn't ask why an older woman was showing up this late with a single suitcase. In a small town like Milford, people usually can't help themselves. But tonight, I got lucky. The room was plain, beige walls, stiff linens, a window looking out over the parking lot. I set my suitcase down, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let it all hit me. I'd been thrown out of my own home. My daughter screamed that I was a burden. My son-in-law practically threatened me if I didn't keep quiet. And my grandkids, those sweet kids, just stared, scared, confused, not understanding how dinner turned into exile. I didn't cry. Tears didn't feel right. It wasn't sadness that washed over me. It was anger, and a deep, bitter kind of disappointment. For 5 years, I lived under their roof. 5 years of swallowing small humiliations. 5 years of biting my tongue to protect secrets that could have torn everything apart. And still, they tossed me out like I was nothing. My phone buzzed in my purse for the third time that hour. I took it out and saw a message from Marianne. I hope you realize what you've done. It's too late to apologize now. I let out a bitter laugh. Classic Marianne. Still trying to make this my fault. Even after she literally shoved me out the front door, I was supposed to carry the guilt. Then came a text from Lowell. Grandma, are you okay? Mom said you said something stupid. My chest tightened. Poor kid, dragged into the mess. I texted back, I'm fine, honey. Don't worry about me. Focus on your studies and be a good brother to Rosalind. A minute later, the phone buzzed again. When are you coming back? I stared at the message, not knowing how to answer. The truth never felt too harsh for a 13-year-old. The lie soon felt like a betrayal. I finally typed, let's talk about this later. Right now you'd better not text me until your parents calmed down. He sent back a quick okay, and that was the end of it. I set the phone down and rubbed my temples. The headache that had started at dinner was only getting worse. I needed to figure out what to do next. It was nearly 11 p.m., too late to call Dorothea. But I knew she wouldn't mind, not given the circumstances. I dialed her number. She picked up after the second ring, like she'd been sitting right next to the phone. Edith, she said, voice rough from age and all those years of smoking. She only quit 5 years ago. She sounded worried. What's wrong? You never call this late. I took a long breath and told her everything. The blow-up at dinner. Marianne's words. Harlan's cold shoulder. How I'd ended up at a hotel with one suitcase at 72. That pompous turkey and your arrogant daughter put you out on the street. Dorothea was fuming. Edith, darling, why didn't you call me right away? I would have come for you. I told her it was late and I needed time to think. Think about what? She scoffed. You're moving in with me tomorrow. I've got 4 bedrooms and only 1 cat. Plenty of room for everybody. I smiled for the first time that night. That was just like Dorothea. Blunt, certain, a little reckless. I'd loved her since the first day of college almost 50 years ago. Are you sure? I asked. This might be for the long haul. I hope it is, she snapped. I've been trying to get you to move in with me for 3 years, instead of playing maid to that ungrateful family. You finally made the right choice, even if you got pushed into it. We decided she'd pick me up at the hotel at 10 in the morning. After the call, I felt the weight in my chest ease just a little. At least I had a plan, a roof, even if just for now. I took a shower, trying to scrub off more than just the day's grime, trying to wash away the hurt. Lying in that unfamiliar bed, I couldn't fall asleep. I kept replaying the night over and over, imagining what might have happened if I'd said something different, if Marianne hadn't gone off, if Harlan had defended me. But the facts stayed the same. My daughter had kicked me out. And now, at 72, I had to start over. Morning came with sunlight slipping through the thin curtains and the sound of cars pulling up to the hotel. I'd slept longer than usual, nearly 9, but still felt like I'd been hit by something. The headache had dulled, but in its place was a hollowness that felt just as heavy. I packed up my things, went downstairs, paid for the room, then stepped outside and sat on a bench in front of the hotel, letting the October sun warm my face. Millford looked calm and quiet, the kind of small town where everyone knows each other, where gossip spreads like brushfire, where it can take decades to build a reputation and just one bad day to lose it. At exactly 10, Dorothea's silver Volvo pulled up to the hotel. The same car she'd jokingly called my latest folly when she bought it for her 70th birthday. Ignoring her son's pleas that maybe it was time to stop driving, she stepped out, tall and graceful, short gray hair, neatly styled, bright lipstick on, as always. Age hadn't really curved her spine, though her face had deepened with lines and her walk had slowed some. At 75, she still looked like someone you didn't want to argue with. Edith, she said, opening her arms. I stepped into them, grateful. My dear, how angry I am with your daughter. Don't waste your energy on it, I said, my smile worn out. What's done is done. She gave a loud snort but let it go, grabbed my suitcase and popped the trunk. I've got the blue room ready, she said as we pulled into the driveway, the one facing the garden. Remember how you always said it was the prettiest room in the house? I nodded, my throat tight. She wasn't just giving me a place to stay, she was trying to make this feel like home. Thank you, I said quietly, for everything. She shot me a look, full of knowing and kindness. There's nothing to thank, sweetheart. Remember, when Leonard died, I didn't think I'd make it through that year. but you showed up every weekend, cooked dinner, dragged me outside. You didn't let me drown in it. Now, it's my turn. Her house sat on Sycamore Lane, a quiet street in the old part of Owasso, where Victorian houses still stood tall beside newer buildings. Hers was one of the old ones, a big 3-story with a mansard roof, wide porch, and a tidy garden out front. Leonard, her late husband, had been an architect, and the house carried his mark, spacious, elegant, never flashy. Inside, we were met by Milo, her gray cat, stretched out like he owned the place on the front hall windowsill. He barely looked at us. "Don't mind him," Dorothea waved. "He's got it in his head. He's the emperor, and we're his staff." She led me through the hall, into the parlor, a high-ceilinged room with big windows, antique furniture mixed with modern pieces. Dorothea had always had a way of blending the old with the new. "Make yourself at home," she said, pointing to the couch. "I'll make tea, then we'll talk." While she moved around the kitchen, I sat there, taking it all in, remembering how many afternoons we'd spent here before I moved in with Marianne. We used to meet almost every week. Tea, books, news. After I moved in with my daughter, it happened less and less. Harlan never liked Dorothea, said she was eccentric and too blunt for someone her age. Marianne didn't make room for her either, especially after Dorothea told her flat out she was too hard on her mother. Dorothea came back with a tray, teapot, cups, cookies. "So," she said as she poured, "what's your plan?" I let out a breath, took the cup. "Honestly, I don't have one. It all happened so fast. All I know is, I'm not going back to Marianne's, not even if she asked, which I doubt. She will, and she shouldn't." Dorothea nodded. "You put up with their indifference too long, but that's not what I meant. What are you going to do about what you know, about your brother-in-law?" I stiffened. Of course, she remembered her everything 2 years ago when I first saw the irregularities in Harlan's accounts. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "Part of me wants to forget it, walk away, start clean. The other part of me knows staying quiet makes me part of it." She looked at me closely over her glasses. "What did you say to Harlan before you left?" I cringed, thinking about it. I kind of let it slip that I wouldn't keep their secrets anymore." Kind as she raised an eyebrow. "Or did you just say it?" "More, the second one," I admitted. I was furious and disappointed. "Then you've got no choice," Dorothea said, setting her cup down hard. "If you told Harlan, he's not just going to sit back and wait. He'll try to make you look like a liar before you can speak. Tell everyone you've got dementia, that you're striking back after being cast out, that you've always hated him. You have to move first." I knew she was right. Harlan's not the kind of man to let a threat slide, especially not one this serious. But what if I was wrong? I finally said what had held me back for years. What if I misread the whole thing? Baral, Dorothea placed her hand over mine. "You used to teach math. You spent 3 decades dealing with numbers. If you say something's off in those reports, then something's off. And you've heard how he talks. You've read his emails. Trust your gut." I nodded, feeling a sharpness settle inside me. For 5 years, I'd looked away from what was happening in my daughter's house. 5 years, I'd watched the lies build up, knowing they might not just be ugly but dangerous. "Not anymore. You're right," I told her. "We have to do something." "But what?" Dorothea smiled, and there was something in it, cool, focused, almost hungry. "I've got a plan, and a few contacts that might help." We spent the next few hours laying out a strategy. Dorothea had been a lawyer, and her network showed it. She was close with the editor of the Owasso Chronicle, knew someone on the town's medical board, and her son Everett worked at a law firm 1 town over. He could give us legal insight if we needed it. After lunch, Dorothea led me to my room, a roomy space with a big bed, a desk near the window, and a private bathroom. The window looked out over her garden, where some of the last roses were still blooming, even this late in October. "Make yourself at home," she said, then left me alone. "Get some rest. Tonight we'll work more on your revenge." "It's not revenge. I shook my head. "It's justice." She gave me a wink before closing the door softly. Once alone, I unpacked, hung my clothes in the closet, set out the small handful of personal things I'd brought. Then, I sat at the window, watching her garden and thinking about how fast everything had changed. Just yesterday, I was just an old woman, surviving in the background of my daughter and son-in-law's picture-perfect life. Now, I was standing right at the edge of something that could bring that whole image crashing down. I was scared, but along with the fear came a feeling I hadn't had in years: freedom. I wasn't doing this to keep some fading version of family peace alive. I was doing it for what was right. The phone buzzed with a message from Rosalind. "Grandma, are you okay? Mom says you're living in a hotel. Is that true? I'm worried." I smiled, warmed by her concern, and wrote back, "I'm fine, honey. I'm staying with Dorothea. Remember her, the one with the cat and the raisin cookies. Don't worry about me." A minute later, she replied, "Can I come over after school? Mom can't know." I paused. I wanted to see her more than anything, but I also didn't want to make her lie. "Let me talk to your mom first." I wrote, "I don't want you in trouble because of me. Mom won't let me." She shot back, "She said you said bad stuff about Dad and now we're not supposed to see you." I sighed. Of course Marianne would twist things like that, try to make the kids pick a side. It still hurt. "Let's meet at the Honeycomb Coffee House after school tomorrow." I typed back, 4 o'clock. "Just don't lie to them straight out. Say you're doing a project with a friend or something." "Okay," Rosalind replied. "Thank you, Grandma. I miss you." Those words, "I miss you." My eyes welled up. No matter how distant or defiant she acted, Rosalind was still the same little girl who used to curl up in my lap and ask me to tell her a story. And now she missed me, just a day after I'd left. That night, Dorothea and I sat in her office, surrounded by piles of papers. Spread out on the desk were copies I'd made 2 years ago, the original clinical trial reports with the full side effect data, and the redacted versions Harlan had sent to the pharmaceutical company. "This should catch the medical board's attention," Dorothea said, eyes on the pages. "But if we want them to open a full investigation, we'll need more. Do you have any newer data?" I shook my head. "Just what I managed to see." Harlan had been extra cautious for the past 6 months, locking his office, never leaving anything out. "Pity," Dorothea muttered, tapping the table with her fingers. "Still, this is a start. Tomorrow, I'll call Raymond, the chairman of the board, and ask for a meeting. Then, I'll reach out to Helena at the Chronicle. She loves breaking stories." "Are you sure it's smart to involve the press?" I asked, unsure. "This could hurt the kids." Dorothea sighed. "Edith, you're too kind. But think about it. If your brother-in-law really falsified side effect data for a drug that's about to hit the market, people's health, people's lives, are at stake. This isn't some family squabble, it's a crime." She was right. Staying quiet would make me complicit. Still, the idea of triggering a public scandal that might hurt my grandkids made my chest ache. "Let's try the official channels first," I said. "The board, maybe the drug company. If that fails, we'll go to the press." Dorothea nodded, though I could tell she would have rather taken a harder line from the start. "Fine. But don't forget, Harlan won't take this lying down. Once he knows you're serious, he'll fight back. And these fights get ugly." I remembered the way Harlan looked at me when he dropped my suitcase on the curb. Cold, calculated, the way he told me to think about Marianne and the kids, the way he made it sound like a threat. "I know what I'm risking," I said softly. "But after what they did, after they ended things on their own, I can't keep quiet." Dorothea smiled and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Edith. I always knew there was steel under that soft surface." We spent another hour going over the plan. Then she left to call her son, and I stayed behind, digging through documents, piecing together what I'd seen and overheard during the last 3 years. The side effects Harlan covered up were serious, everything from liver damage to neurological issues. Around 20% of patients on ART-43 had these problems, but in the reports sent to the company, that number had been cut to 3%. Statistical error. Harlan had called it once during a phone call with a colleague. I remembered how I first stumbled onto the reports. I'd been searching for one of his lost cufflinks in his office after he blamed me for ironing his shirt wrong. A box had fallen off a shelf, and among the papers I saw 2 nearly identical reports with different numbers. I'd assumed it was a mistake, a typo. Then I overheard that phone call where Harlan talked about fixing the data. And later, a conversation with Marianne. She told him to be careful with the documents. I stayed silent for 3 years, telling myself I didn't know enough about medicine to draw conclusions, that there might be a reasonable explanation, that keeping quiet was best for the kids. But after Marianne chose to cut ties herself, I had no reason to keep pretending. Harlan had to answer for what he'd done, and Marianne for what she allowed. I gathered everything into a folder and handed it to Dorothea to keep in her safe. Then I stepped out onto the porch, where she was smoking, a habit she always fell back into when things got rough, no matter how many times she promised to quit. "I'm sorry," she said with a sheepish smile when she saw me looking. "Old habits die hard." "So do old secrets," I said, sitting down next to her. We just sat there, quiet, watching the evening light settle over the garden. It was October, cool, not cold yet. Somewhere a dog barked in the distance. It all looked calm, nothing like the storm that was about to rip through our little town. "You sure about this?" Dorothea asked all of a sudden. "It's not too late to walk away, to leave it all behind, start over here with her. No headlines, no exposure." That was the unspoken offer. A part of me wanted it. A simple life, one where I could finally breathe, with someone I trusted, far from the family mess and all its moral wreckage. But the other part, the part that wouldn't let go, knew peace was never possible unless I spoke up. "I have to do this," I said, steady. "Not for revenge, but because it's the right thing to do." Dorothea gave a small nod, stubbed out her cigarette, and took my hand. "Then we'll do it together. Tomorrow I'll call Raymond and set it up. Whatever comes next, we face it." The next morning, I sat in Dorothea's kitchen, sipping coffee and watching the garden through her big window. Milo, her cat, was curled up in the chair beside me, licking his paw like nothing in the world could go wrong. The scene looked peaceful, domestic, nothing like the chaos I'd unleashed just the day before. After a lot of back and forth, I'd finally made my move. Dorothea and I called her old friend Raymond Doyle, the chairman of the city's medical board, and asked for an emergency meeting. Doyle had silver hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for never looking the other way. He read over the papers I brought, his face unreadable. "Mrs. Sangwain," he said, taking off his glasses and rubbing his nose, "if this is accurate, it's a serious offense. Tampering with clinical trial data is a felony." "I know," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "That's why I brought it to you. You understand this could destroy your son-in-law's career. It might take your whole family down with it." I nodded. I could feel the weight of the choice in every part of me. If we don't stop him, people will get hurt. The side effects he's covering up could do real damage. Doyle looked me over, like he was trying to figure out if I meant it. Then he gave one firm nod. "I'll launch an investigation immediately. Be ready to testify." After that, things moved fast. The medical board reached out to the pharma company where Harlan worked. At the same time, Dorothea called the local paper, not to publish, but to make sure they were on standby. And now, just one day since I left Marianne's house, the story was everywhere. Renowned doctor falsified clinical trial results. Dr. Abbott under investigation. Clinic closed. I saw Harlan's face on the front page of the online paper. It was a picture from last year's charity gala. He looked polished, trusted, exactly how he wanted the world to see him. "I think it started," Dorothea said, walking into the kitchen with a clipboard. "They just took Harlan out in cuffs. Witnesses said he kept yelling about conspiracies and lies." I felt hollow inside, not proud, not even relieved, just tired and a little sick. "You did the right thing, Beryl." Dorothea rested a hand on my shoulder. "He was risking lives to feed his ego and bank account." I nodded, but I didn't trust myself to speak. In my head, I knew this had to happen. Harlan had to face it. But in my heart, all I could see was Marianne, my grandkids, what this was going to do to them. The phone rang. It was Marianne's number. I stared at the screen. "You don't have to pick up," Dorothea said. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I have to hear her." I hit the button. All I heard was my daughter breathing, ragged. "How could you?" Her voice was tight with anger and desperation. "How could you do this to us?" "Marianne," I tried to keep my voice even. "Your husband faked those test results. People could have gotten hurt." "You don't get it," she shouted. "You destroyed our family, our reputation, our lives, and for what? Payback for making you move out." "I'm not out for revenge," I told her flat. "If it were something small, I never would have," but Marianne cut me off. "You call this a small thing?" "Harlan got arrested right in front of the kids. The cops are tearing through our house. My kids got pulled aside and questioned Mom." I shut my eyes, picturing Lowell and Rosalind's faces, scared out of their minds, and it stung. "I'm sorry the kids are in the middle of this," I said, meaning it. "But you and Harlan should have thought about what you were risking." "I didn't do anything," Marianne shouted. "I just stood by my husband. That's what a wife does." "You knew," Marianne, I said quietly. I heard you both talking. You were helping him cover it all up. There was a long silence on the other end. They're accusing me of being part of it, Marianne said at last, her voice suddenly empty. I've been fired, no severance. I might lose my license to work in medicine. Do you have any idea what you've done? Marianne, I searched for the right words. I know this is hell for you, but you need to think about the patients who might have gotten hurt. What would have happened if that drug went to market with fake reports? Don't you start lecturing me. Her voice was cold again. You betrayed your own family, your own daughter. That's unforgivable. And you threw your mother out. I answered quietly. Looks like we're even. Marianne let out a sharp breath, like I'd struck her. You know what? You're not my mother anymore, and you're not my kid's grandmother. Forget about us. For good. She hung up. I set the phone down on the table and felt this strange, empty calm. Part of me still hoped Marianne might show some regret, see what she and Harlan had actually done, but all she saw was betrayal from me, never her own part in it. She's still in shock, Dorothea said gently, sliding a fresh cup of coffee my way. She need time to understand what's happened. I shook my head. No, Dot, she never forgive me, and I don't know if I can forgive her. That's when Dorothea's phone went off. She answered, listened, then looked over at me. It's Marlene from the Chronicle. She wants to talk to you as a whistleblower. No, I told her firmly. No interviews. I did what needed doing, but I don't want any of this in the papers. Dorothea passed along my answer and hung up. I get it, she said. Just know you're a hero to a lot of people right now. Not everyone would have the guts to do what you did. I gave a bitter smile. A hero. I doubt Lowell and Rosalind would agree. Right on cue, the phone rang again. This time, an unknown number. I picked up. Careful, Grandma. Rosalind's voice was low, like she was whispering. Is it you? Yes, honey. My heart twisted. Are you all right? I don't know, she said honestly. Everything's messed up here. Dad's with the police. Mom's crying and yelling. Lowell locked himself in his room and won't come out. I'm so sorry, I told her, barely keeping my voice steady. None of this is your fault, or your brother's. Is that really true? Rosalind asked, sudden and searching. What they're saying about Dad, that he faked those medical reports. I paused, searching for a way to answer a 16-year-old who came at me with something like that. Yeah, I finally admitted. I had proof, and I brought it to the medical board. Is that why you left us? Her voice had that lost sound, because of Dad's job. No, sweetheart. I left because your mom told me to go. Do you remember that night at dinner? I remember, Rosalind replied quietly. She was shouting at you, but I figured you'd work it out. Sometimes grown-ups can't work it out, I told her, my voice low. But that never meant I stopped loving you or Lowell. There was silence on the line. And when Rosalind finally spoke, her words were softer still. Mom says you betrayed us, that you always hated Dad and wanted to hurt him. I let out a breath. Of course Marianne would turn the kids against me. I never wanted to hurt your father, I said, steady. But what he did was wrong, and it was dangerous. Sometimes you have to make hard choices for the right reasons. I have to go, Rosalind whispered, sudden and quick. Mom's coming. I'll call if I get the chance. The line clicked off, and I was left with a chest full of heavy things unsaid. The day rolled forward, and the story just kept growing. The Harlan Clinic was shut down. All the patients sent somewhere else. The drug company put out a statement denying any connection to the researcher, and promising to help with the investigation. By late afternoon, every local news station was running stories about the year's biggest medical scandal. They showed the Harlan Clinic with locked doors, played clips from stunned coworkers, even aired a short piece with a patient who'd been in the trials and was now talking lawsuit. They say the first lawsuits have started, Dorothea mentioned, flipping channels. And this is just the beginning. I nodded, silent, watching everything Harlan had built fall apart in a few hours. On the screen, his face looked thinner, older, as the cops walked him out of the courthouse after arraignment. It's strange, I said, staring at the TV. I've known this man 16 years, lived with him for 5, and I can't say I ever really knew him. People are good at hiding who they are, Dorothea said quietly, even from those closest to them. That night, Lowell called. Unlike his sister, he wasn't whispering, and he wasn't hiding. He spoke straight out, voice flat and hard. Nothing like a typical 13-year-old. Why didn't you tell me the truth? He demanded. skipping over any kind of hello. When I wrote to you yesterday, you could have warned me. Warned you about what, Lowell? I asked, careful, that you were about to turn Dad in. His words were sharp with anger. I looked like a fool at school. Everybody knew, but me. My heart sank. I hadn't thought about what it would mean for the kids at school, how fast word would get around in a place this small. I'm sorry, Lowell, I said, honest. I didn't want you to find out this way. The guys are saying Dad's a criminal. His voice shook, that he's going to jail. Is that true? I didn't know what to tell him. I couldn't lie, but the truth felt like too much for a 2-year-old. Your dad made a mistake, I said carefully. A big one. Now he has to answer for it. But he's still your dad, and he loves you, no matter what. If he loved me, Lowell said, voice sharp and small, he wouldn't do things that could get him sent away. Hearing that from a kid was a punch in the gut. Lowell got more than I gave him credit for. Grown-ups mess up too. Honey, I said, quiet. Sometimes the mistakes are huge. How's Mom? He asked out of nowhere, his voice careful. Did she mess up too? I took a breath, weighing my words. I couldn't push my grandson against his mother, but I wasn't going to lie to him. Your mom knew what your dad was doing, I told him. She helped him keep it secret. But I know she loves you and Rosalind more than anything. He blinked, tears threatening. Then why does she yell all the time? Why does she say those awful things about you? Why did she make you go? She's scared, Lowell, I told him, my voice dropping. When people are scared, they say and do things they wish they could take back. He took a moment before speaking again. Mom says you betrayed the family. She says you always hated Daddy and wanted to ruin us. The same accusations Rosalind had made. Marianne was pushing her side of the story hard. That isn't true, I said, keeping my voice steady. I never wanted to break your family apart. I loved all of you, even your dad. But sometimes you have to choose between family and doing what's right. And you chose what's right, he asked, suddenly sounding much older than he was. Yes, I said, soft but certain. I hope one day you'll understand that. After talking to Lowell, I just sat there, staring out at the dusk pressing in on the window, heavy and gray. Dorothea left me alone, reading the moment, knowing I needed to process everything. Later that night, we were in the living room, sitting with mugs of herbal tea. The phone rang. Dorothea answered, listened, glanced at me with worry, and said, she's here, but Marianne, I don't think this is a good time. I held out my hand for the phone. She handed it over, hesitation written all over her face. Are you happy now? Marianne's voice was raw, shredded from hours of crying or screaming. Is this what you wanted, Marianne? I said, drained. I never meant to hurt anybody, least of all the kids. It's too late to care about the kids, she yelled. You've already ruined us. Harlan's under house arrest, out on bail but stuck in town. The clinic is shut down. I lost my job. Our accounts are frozen. How are we supposed to live? Did you ever think about that? You have a degree, I reminded her. You can find another job. You still have your house. She gave a sharp, bitter laugh. House? What house? Do you have any clue what it's like here? People are talking about us everywhere. The neighbors turn away. Nobody returns our calls. Janice Alden, my best friend since college, just canceled on me, said it's too awkward to be seen together right now. 15 years gone, just like that. I couldn't help but sigh. I hadn't considered how isolating this would be for her. I'm sorry for everything, I said, meaning it. But you and Harlan made your decision when you chose to fake those test results. I didn't fake anything, Marianne screamed. I was only helping my husband. That's still a crime, I told her quietly. Being part of it is enough. Her voice shook. And you, my own mother, will testify against me. I paused. Turning in paperwork on Harlan was one thing. Testifying against my own daughter was something else. I'll only tell the truth, I said at last, about what I saw and heard. There was silence, and then Marianne spoke, all the heat gone from her words. Then yes, you betrayed your family. No, I said, not letting my voice waver. You betrayed your oath as a doctor when you helped Harlan hide the side effects of that drug. You put people's lives in danger for the money. The line went quiet. Then Marianne spoke again, barely more than a whisper, her voice strangely calm. You know what? I always thought you were weak, always giving in, letting everyone walk over you. But you're the most cold and calculating person I've ever met. Congratulations, Mom. You got what you wanted. Our lives are ruined. With those words, she hung up. I set the phone down slowly, feeling a hollow emptiness settle in my chest. She's in shock, Dorothea said gently, taking the phone from me. Just give her time to process all of this. I shook my head. No. She's never going to forgive me, and honestly, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forgive her either. That night, I couldn't sleep for hours, turning over the consequences of what I'd done. I made the call I thought was right, but the cost was steep. I might have lost my daughter for good, and now my connection to my grandkids was on the line too. Harlan and Marianne's family fell apart. Money gone, social standing gone, all their emotional bonds shattered. The reputation they'd built in that town, their fortress, was just dust now. And still, when I finally drifted off to sleep as dawn came, I felt nothing close to regret, just a steady, silent certainty that I'd made the right call, even if I'd have to carry it forever. 3 months went by in a blink. January turned Milford into a snow globe, the whole town under a white blanket. Every street and yard looking like something out of a Christmas card. Sitting by Dorothea's window, I'd watch the snow swirl around the streetlights and think about how much had shifted for me since all this started. The uproar around Harlan had faded. The crazy first weeks when his name was plastered on every local paper now replaced by a slow, thorough investigation. The pharmaceutical company pulled every contract, started their own probe. His medical license was still on ice. The clinic closed for good. The patients from those trials launched a class action suit. Marianne lost her job running the clinic, and, last I heard from Lowell, she was still looking for work. But being known as the wife of a crooked doctor was shutting doors everywhere. Money was running out. They'd already sold one car and let their housekeeper go. I took all of this in with a mess of feelings. I didn't gloat, but I knew this was the fallout. And they'd earned it. Harlan and Marianne made their choice when they faked those research results. And this was the bill coming due. What's on your mind? Dorothea came in with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Family business again. I nodded as I took mine. Today's Lowell's 14th birthday. I sent a present, had it delivered, but who knows if Marianne will let him keep it. Dorothea huffed, settling across from me. If she's going to toss her own son's birthday gift just to save face, she's even more foolish than I thought. She's just hurting, I said quietly, and scared. Her whole life's falling apart. A world built on lies is going to crumble sooner or later. Dorothea said, by the way, did you remember we're meeting Everett tomorrow to sign the education fund paperwork? I nodded. After a lot of thought, I'd set up a college fund for Lowell and Rosalind. Whatever their parents had done, those kids weren't going to pay for it. Everett, Dorothea's son, and a top-notch lawyer, had made sure neither Harlan nor Marianne could ever get their hands on the money. It was strictly for the kids' education and future. You think Marianne will take this as more meddling? I asked, uncertain. Maybe, Dorothea shrugged, but that's not your problem. You're doing this for the kids, not her. My life had changed more in 3 months than it had in years. I wasn't just some old lady putting up with petty slights for a glimpse of my grandkids. Now I shared a big house with my closest friend, had a full social calendar, and did what I wanted with my days. Dorothea and I went to art shows and concerts, saw a local theater, joined a book club. At Christmas, we took a couple days out of town, stayed at a cozy inn overlooking the lake. In February, we'd planned a trip to Florida to get away from the cold. For the first time, I was financially independent. The money from selling the house, some of which I had once handed over for Harlan's investments, came back to me as the investigation wrapped up. My son-in-law had misused the funds, just adding to his record. With that money and my retirement savings, I could get by without worrying about the future. Still, even with everything that had changed for the better, I couldn't ignore the ache from losing my daughter and hardly hearing from my grandkids. Marianne refused to speak to me at all. The last thing she sent, 2 weeks after Harlan was arrested, was, I hope you are satisfied with the results of your betrayal. Don't try to contact us. Things were messier with the grandkids. Rosalind, always the careful one, only reached out every now and then, never openly. Short messages, the occasional secret call. She was caught between her parents and her feelings for me. Lowell, on the other hand, surprised me. He wrote, called, sometimes even showed up, telling his folks he was at a friend's house. The last time he visited, a week ago, we sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of cocoa, talking through everything that had happened. I understand why you did it, Grandma. Dad wasn't doing the right thing, and you couldn't just let it slide. Thank you, Lowell, I told him, grateful for his clarity. Not many adults see things that clearly. But he frowned, saying, Mom's still really mad. She says, you destroyed our family out of revenge. I let out a breath. Marianne still refused to see the truth. Stuck on the idea, I acted out of spite, ignoring what she and Harlan had been doing. Your mom's scared and confused, I said. When people are afraid, they want someone to blame instead of looking at themselves. After a pause, I asked, how's your dad doing? Lowell shrugged. I don't know. He doesn't say much, just sits in his office all day. Sometimes I hear him and Mom arguing at night. My chest tightened. Despite everything, I didn't want my grandkids caught in a family mess. What about you? I asked. Softer, how's school? He tried for a smile, but it barely landed. It was tough at first. Everyone talking about Dad, pointing fingers. It's better now, though I've got friends who don't care. That's when Lowell told me Rosalind was having a rougher time. At 16, what people think means everything, more than it does at 13. Some of her friends cut her off. Her boyfriend broke up with her. Her grades dropped. She cried a lot and barely left her room. I listened with a heavy heart. I never wanted them to hurt, but I knew I'd done what needed to be done. Harlan couldn't keep putting patients at risk, and I wasn't going to stay quiet. The doorbell snapped me out of my thoughts. Dorothea, reading in her chair across the hall, looked up, surprised. Are you expecting someone? I shook my head and went to the door. To my shock, Marianne was standing there, pale, tired, eyes dark and sunken. May I come in? She asked, avoiding my eyes. We need to talk. I stepped back and let her in. She came inside slowly, scanning the place like she was bracing herself for something. Seeing Dorothea made her tense up even more. Maybe we should talk in private, I said, looking at my daughter. Marianne nodded. Dorothea got up, gave me a reassuring look, and left the room. Have a seat, I offered, pointing to the couch. Want some tea? No, Marianne snapped, but sat down anyway. I didn't come here for tea. I took the chair across from her, ready for whatever was coming. She looked worn out, but there was resolve in her eyes. Harlan is pleading guilty, she blurted out. With the plea deal, he'll get probation and a big fine, but he won't do any jail time. I told her honestly I was glad the kids weren't going to lose their father. Marianne shot me a look, quick and sharp, as if checking if I was making fun of her. She went on, bitter, saying his career in medicine was finished. And so was hers. Nobody wants to hire the wife of a cheating doctor, not even for office work. I didn't answer because nothing I could say would sound real. Given my part in all this, any sympathy would just come off as fake. You must be happy, Marianne challenged. You got what you wanted, ruined our lives. I told her quietly I never wanted to ruin her life. I just wanted to stop something dangerous, something that could really hurt people, and for that, you betrayed your own family. There was something old and angry in her voice. No, Marianne, I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't betray my family. I did what anyone should do. What she and Harlan did wasn't just wrong, it was a crime. Marianne looked away, shoulders folding in. She said she didn't know everything, that Harlan didn't tell her the whole story. She just helped with the paperwork. I told her she knew enough, not harsh but not backing down either. I'd heard their talks. I'd seen her fixing the reports. I trusted my husband, she burst out, her anger flaring. Is that a crime? He said everything was under control, that this was standard for research, that the side effects weren't serious. I asked if she really believed all that, if she could after seeing the real numbers, after hearing about patients getting really sick. Marianne didn't answer, wouldn't look at me, and the silence between us made her answer plain. After a long pause, I asked her why she came. She drew a breath, steadying herself. She said Lowell wanted to live with me, that he'd told her just yesterday, said even if they didn't allow it, he'd find a way. That stunned me. I knew Lowell cared about me, but I'd never expected this. I tried to sound careful, saying he was just a kid, maybe just upset from all the stress. No, Marianne said, shaking her head. He's serious. He's been looking up legal rights, how foster care works. Even found cases where kids his age got to choose who they lived with. I couldn't help but feel a little proud of my grandson for being so determined. I asked Marianne what she wanted me to do. She finally looked me in the eye and told me to talk him out of it. Tell him I couldn't take him in. Tell him anything. but make him stay. I told her I couldn't do that. It wasn't true. I could take him in, and I wanted to see my grandkids. I'd said that all along. So you want to take my son to? She demanded, voice desperate. You've already destroyed our reputation, our careers, our money. Now you want to take our kids. I told her straight. I wasn't taking anyone, but I wouldn't lie to Lowell, and if he wanted to see me, I'd see him. If he wanted to stay, I wouldn't turn him away. The choice should be his, not hers, or mine. Marianne covered her face. I thought for a second she might cry, but when she lowered her hands, her eyes were dry. I've lost everything, she said, quiet now. My job, my reputation, people's respect. Harlan's not the man I married. He's broken, angry. Rosalind hardly talks at all. Now Lowell wants to leave. For the first time that whole talk, I felt a sting of sympathy for her. No matter what, Marianne was still my daughter, and it hurt to watch her fall apart. I wondered if maybe there was some way we could meet in the middle. I brought it up first. Lowell could stay with me on weekends or a few days a week. That way, he'd have the breathing room he needs but still stay connected to your family. Marianne looked up at me, worn out. Do you really think that'll work? I said, honestly, I don't know, but it's worth trying. For Lowell, she nodded slowly, as if just moving her head took everything out of her. All right, have him come for the weekend. We'll see how it goes. I felt a weight lift. Not a total win, but at least we were moving forward. What about Rosalind? I asked, careful. She can come too if she wants. Marianne hesitated. Rosalind's having a rough time right now. Just give her some space. I nodded, knowing not to push. What mattered was that I had a line of communication with my grandkids again, even if it was barely open. There's something else, Marianne said, standing up. I heard you're starting a foundation for kids. Yes, I said. No matter what's happened between us, I want to make sure their future is safe. Thank you, she said softly, the word coming out like it cost her. With how things are financially for us, that'll make a difference. I nodded, letting her have her pride. I'll head out, Marianne said, heading for the door. Can Lowell come this Friday? Absolutely, I said. I'll be waiting for him. When the door closed behind her, I stood in the hallway for a long time, letting everything sink in. Dorothea came over and rested her hand on my shoulder. How'd it go? Better than I thought, I said truthfully. Lowell will be over on weekends, maybe Rosalind too, eventually. That's good, she said. Kids shouldn't have to pay for their parents' mistakes. Yes, I agreed, then added with a tired smile, though Marianne still blames me, not herself or Harlan. She needs time, Dorothea said quietly. Maybe she never fully admit what she did, but her anger will fade. I nodded, feeling the truth of that. I knew a full reconciliation with my daughter was probably out of reach. Too many things had been said and done. Still, maybe in time, we could at least learn to be in the same room for the kids' sake. That night, sitting in my room, looking out over the snow in the backyard, I thought about how much had changed. 3 months ago, I was nothing but a guest no one wanted in my own daughter's house, taking every little slight just to see my grandkids. Now I'm living on my own terms, away from poison and silent complicity in other people's wrongs. It cost me distance from Marianne, watching my grandkids hurt, the collapse of a family I still love. But I couldn't have chosen any differently. Sometimes you have to do what's right, even if it hurts. I took out the little box I'd put aside for Lowell's visit on Friday. A pocket watch that used to be his grandfather's. A reminder that time keeps going, and so do we. My life was turning over again. At 72, I was starting fresh, surrounded by friends who felt like family. Grandkids I hoped to really know, plans and hopes I once thought I'd lost. I had no idea what the future would look like. Maybe Marianne would let her guard down. Maybe Rosalind would come back to the bright, curious girl I remember. Maybe Lowell would find his footing between his parents and me. But even if none of that happened, I knew I'd chosen what was right. In a world where people look away from what's wrong, where it's easier to keep quiet than to speak up, I found the courage to do what I believed in, even if it cost me my family. And in that choice, in holding on to my own integrity, even when it meant loss, I finally found the dignity and peace that years of keeping my head down never gave me. If there's one thing I've learned after everything I've been through, it's this. There are moments in life when you have to choose between preserving the illusion of a family and standing up for the truth, even if it means losing the very people you love the most. I didn't do it out of hatred or revenge. I did it because I knew that if I stayed silent, I'd become an accomplice. I kept quiet for 5 years, just because I was afraid of losing them. But it was only when they pushed me out of that house that I finally found the courage to stop betraying myself. Now I want to ask you, if it were you, standing at that same crossroads between family and truth, between blood and justice, what would you do? Would you stay silent to keep a false peace, or speak up for what's right, even if it means walking away alone? I want to hear your answer. And believe this, God always blesses those who dare to live honestly.